Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal Podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and I am here with an incredible guest today. This is Jen Young, who is the co-founder of Outdoorsy. Think of it like the Airbnb of overlanding and travel and RV and vehicles. And of course, you're a super well-traveled individual yourself. So thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. You're a little bit of a celebrity yourself in our world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, and of course, what's fun for me right off the bat in getting the chance to interview you is a good friend of mine, Mario from AT Overland. He actually had several vehicles that he rented on your site years ago, and he had such a positive experience with it. At the time, I just remember him sharing how it allowed him to have a vehicle that would maybe be difficult to afford or to have as many different variations of vehicles that he ended up with. And then he always found that people were really thoughtful with his trucks when they went out into the field. I mean, people, of course, made little mistakes or there were little problems, but people always came into it with a sense of like, this is someone else's camper and I'm going to try to treat it as my own. So I've actually got direct experience with someone who for years rented on your platform and had really good success with that. So someone in our own industry used it and had really good luck. So it's really, really an exciting thing.
I love hearing about happy customers, that's for sure. Particularly people that have the combination of wanting to be able to make like hit some good financial outcomes, but also share their passions with others. And this category, like overlanding, is definitely a big passion area.
Well, and it's growing so quickly. And for me, I always thought like it's the ultimate hack. You know, I think about, I've got a little historic home in downtown Prescott, Arizona, and I Airbnb'd that home for years while I was traveling in Africa and around the world. But if you had a camper that you also did that with through Outdoorsy, imagine how cool it would be to, when you're traveling in the camper, your Airbnb in the house, when you're living in the house, you're using Outdoorsy to rent your camper. Like, what an interesting concept.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're a marketplace that allows you to fund your dreams, right?
Yeah.
You can make those extra dollars to be able to plan your next leg around the world. There's a couple of really cool families and people out there that are doing just that. There's this one family that I have been following actually since the beginning years of founding the company. I think the family Instagram channel is called Maley Mish.
Oh, yeah, and they're great.
They're just this like beautiful family.
Yep.
Married couple, and I think they might have 4 kids and maybe like 2 cats or something. I don't think they have dogs. I don't know, but they have done exactly that. I think they just recently got a new truck camper, but they've done something like 120 countries. They've educated their kids all around the world. And I think they've come off the road a little bit here and there, but they're a little bit more full-time than your friend or the people you're talking about. But yeah, that's what you do, right? Like if you have a dream to learn and experience the whole world, then start to plan how you can, buy a unit, make some money, plan your next leg of a trip, and then go out for like 3 or 4 months.
What a great example. And Molly Mish, they've been on the podcast. So for those that are listening, you can listen to their story. And I think even, about my sailboat, I could be renting my sailboat when I'm not using it. I could be renting my camper when I'm not using it. I've already rented my home when I was traveling. So it's a really interesting idea. But before we get too much into kind of like how the nuts and bolts of that might work, I would love to hear a little bit more about your story because you began as a traveler and it seems like you identified a need in the marketplace. But let's talk about your Airstream. I know you spent years on the road. Let's talk about what kicked off your passion for travel.
My motivation was different in some ways to my co-founder's motivation, but for me personally, it was really a call to spend more time outdoors and in nature. I had been probably 15 years at that point working in some pretty high octane corporate environments. I worked in the advertising industry for many years, actually on 3 continents. And it was really intense fluorescent lights and boardroom working. And I loved it. It was great work and really great team, some of the best people that I've ever worked with. But I was hitting burnout for sure. And I needed a different path in life. And any time that I spent closest to God's great design, the mountains, the lakes, the streams, the road, and all of the like communities and people that you meet out there, like the happier I felt and the clearer things just became in my mind. So first it was just an overall interest to spend more time outdoors where I felt like my best version of myself.
Hmm.
And as we tried to figure out, okay, what could we do in that realm, we started to see that there was an opportunity for building a marketplace, starting with recreational vehicle and camper vans. And that sort of like kicked us off on the path. And then we had to figure out, well, how do we learn enough to actually build something? And the only way you learn is by talking to customers. So we just sold the houses and got in the Airstream and started asking questions.
What year was that when you were first kicking off?
I think it was 2014.
Wow.
A long time ago.
Yeah. So you're coming up on, 12 years now as an organization. You got the highs of COVID, which I'm sure for your experience had to have been insane.
Oh, I mean, we thought we were going to lose the company. It was that serious because I remember, I'll never forget that week. Do you remember that week when everybody sort of like gathered around their TV in their living room on the main news stations and they were showing that big map? And it was the first time you were seeing like all of the countries affected. Well, for us, we were like, oh no, this isn't a short term or a small problem. This is a really big problem. And then I think it was probably about 3 days after that, all of the bookings just started like falling off of our Tableau reports and canceling. And so we had absolutely no bookings and we had no revenue, but we had a lot of team members and staff to support a marketplace at that point. So we called some emergency meetings with our leadership team and we started to figure out like, how do we keep the company afloat? And then how do we start to figure out if it will ever bounce back and in what ways? But the first early weeks were devastating for everybody in the country and around the world. And then for us at a company level, we didn't know that we would make it. And it turned out to end up being a really awesome moment for us in the end, because what we offered as a marketplace provided a really much needed reprieve for everybody that had been, cooped up inside for a long time as the months rolled on.
It was the same for us. We were terrified in the beginning. In fact, I was in Southern Africa and I didn't know if I was going to make it home. The flights were all booked and I didn't know if I was going to have to somehow get on a expatriate flight or something out of Johannesburg. I didn't know how I was going to get home. And I didn't know if I would have a business for very long with everybody, with the whole market changing the way that it was. But to your point, it ended up being a bellwether moment for overlanding and vehicle-based travel because it allowed people to basically be in their own little camper, didn't have to have a mask on. You're out in nature.
Social distancing,
That's
remember?
Right. The great form of social distancing you offered, which is very cool. So, well, one of the things I would love to ask you about is in your time that you spent in the Airstream, the time that you have spent traveling, how did that help inform how you wanted to set up the organization, how you wanted to empower your team? How did that experience out in nature, doing the exploration and travel, begin to inform how you behaved as a leader?
I think that the most important learning that came from that experience was always having healthy respect for your customers and learning from your customers. And that's been challenging to keep, while it's still our number one company value today, that's been really challenging to keep top of mind across all of our business leaders as the company gets larger, because you can get further away from your customer really fast, right? Like in the early days for us, it was pretty easy for us to spend all of our time building software and doing feature releases in campgrounds and RVs and living full time. And we had a small group. And then the next wave of people that we were bringing on, we asked the same thing because they were building the software for a lot of our professional operators. So we asked them to be in restaurants or the towns where our best professional operators lived, or go to their businesses and work out of their lobbies and like see firsthand for what the guest experience is like. But as the company has gotten larger, we have a little over 200 people now. And we operate in Slack, and we've launched a lot of new products and features, and we have expanded into some bigger business divisions like insurance. Getting close or staying close to your customer and the customer insights is a lot more difficult to do that. And for me in particular, I think when I say getting close to the customer, I mean you are listening firsthand ear what the customer is saying. So
Yeah.
whether that is, I mean, it's a good second best to read every single customer review in their words. That helps. But it's not okay to just assume what you think by looking at Tableau dashboards and inferring based on booking trends or some insights. In my mind, that's like two steps too far removed. You need to sit in on the software reviews for our SaaS product, or you need to sit in on our customer service escalation calls, or get a good cross section of like hearing directly from the customer in all of the ways that you can in your, your corporate job, and then try to get out in market or meet customers as frequently as possible as well in real life. And there's
Yeah, that
a
makes
variety
sense.
of ways you can do that.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think about how, because I had my home on Airbnb for years, I would have loved to have had a more active feedback from the company of like what things are working, what doesn't work, especially within the context of my home, which is a 100+ year old historic home right downtown. So it's a very specific kind of customer. Like, what
Yeah.
ways could I have improved the home that would have made the experience better for customers? And you just don't get a lot of that. So the fact that you guys are even thinking that way, particularly in such a dynamic rental like a vehicle, I think that's really wise.
Yeah, we've over the years we've tried different things, but we always try to have a customer council where we hear and we ask, or focus groups where we ask customers in certain segments, like you just mentioned, and allow our product managers and our marketing managers to spend
Yeah,
time like hearing in customers' words what they want to see more, or what they would describe as being the best or the worst of the guest experience, and vice
sure.
versa, the host experience.
Well, one of the things I would love to hear as with you being a co-founder is you're working for these other companies, you're in the executive space, you're traveling and working on 3 different continents. What inspired you to say, I'm going to step off on my own and I'm going to start my own business? Like what was that turning point for you? What actually drove that decision to take such a huge risk?
I think I've always been an entrepreneur in spirit, or at heart, since I was like a little girl. I like the idea of building and creating things, and running a business, and understanding like what is new, and figuring that out from 0 to 1, instead of working within the confines of somebody else's company or team or department. So for me, I loved the freedom of being able to see if we could take a really big problem or opportunity and make something of it. And then, because I have the grit and stamina to not quit when most people will quit,
Sure.
you pair those two things together and iterate, and you can build a business. But you do have to have certain variables locked in first. Like, is there a market?
Hmm.
Can we price this correctly? Is there a revenue model that will scale? But if you
Hmm.
can lock those, and fortunately for us, that existed, because there wasn't a marketplace, there wasn't a market leader for outdoor travel within these vehicle assets when we first started building Outdoorsy. So I had the perfect ingredients to get started.
Absolutely. You had the right product market fit. You didn't have any competition. I think back when we started Overland Journal and Expedition Portal in 2005, which is crazy to think it's been that long, 20 years now. There wasn't any competition. The same thing. For me, the idea of having agency, which is why I chose to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to control my own day and my own destiny, even if it meant a great deal of pain and risk in order to have that. But doesn't that make us for great travelers? I can see why you love to travel, because it's all about risk. You're going to new places. You're trying to not get lost. You're trying to keep the trailer on the road and everything else. So I think travelers make for great entrepreneurs if you can keep them in one place long enough.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the perfect intersection of freedom, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
Freedom to build something, freedom to figure it out, and freedom to
Hmm.
go like wherever you need to. I've met
Yeah.
some of our most like favorite entrepreneurial minds as we were building out different parts of the business, because we started with the marketplace first. But I don't know if you know this part of our story, Scott. We post COVID, we we decided to build out a destination network, or we started to move into like physical assets and build out some campgrounds and build
Cool.
a glamping retreat from scratch. And again, we got out on the road to do that too, right? Like, we didn't know enough about the campground business and like what were the core metrics that make that successful? What were some of those consideration sets around like the number of sites, location, price points? So we spent a lot of time surveying markets and meeting with campground owners and business owners to make sure that we were making good decisions around what markets to enter. And the number of entrepreneurs that you meet when you're in these states and cities is pretty significant
and inspiring. What's the name of the campground side of the business so that way the listener can know?
Thank you for asking. So we've got 3 campgrounds. The Outdoorsy Yosemite campground is absolutely stunning. It's near Bass Lake. It's about a 5 or 7 minute walk down to Bass Lake.
Wow.
And not too far out from the entrance of Yosemite. And that's a beautiful natural RV and like camping tent park. And then we have a outdoorsy campground in Bayfield, which is right next to Durango.
Nice.
Which is perfect for mountain bikers and skiers. Durango, I don't know if you're familiar with Durango, but it's just like perfectly situated in southern Colorado.
Yeah, isn't Bayfield kind of on the way to Pagosa Springs?
It is, yeah. Yep. It is. That's our second campground. And then we built a third property in Hill Country, Stonewall, Texas.
Fun.
And that is right next to Fredericksburg, which is, I think Travel and Leisure might be reporting Fredericksburg as the number one. Is it like the number one travel destination to visit this year?
Well, go Texas. Go Texas.
Gorgeous. It's got gorgeous like German heritage, and it's just
cool.
This fantastic restaurants. They call it the Napa Valley of Texas. There's a lot of vineyards in the area, and that's our third property. So we call those the Outdoorsy Destination Network.
That's amazing. And then is there if I remember, there was a third arm to your business. So you have the vehicle rental side, and then is that the insurance side, or what kind of makes up your current portfolio?
Yeah. Insurance is a really big part of our business. The brand that most people know us for is Roamly. It's a adventure built insurance brand. So we have a basket of insurance products that have specialty coverage and pricing for the assets that our core customer, an RVer or a boat or a motorcycle or an ATV customer is looking for. So that's the brand people know us for when they buy their personal insurance. But that InsurTech provides all of the episodic rental insurance for the marketplace, outdoorsy.com. So when you're checking out a vehicle, you're using our insurance products, which, going back to one of your first questions, what did we learn when we were out on the road and building the marketplace? One of the most breakthrough things that we learned for the company's success, as well as for what makes us special, is that safety and trust was like the most important currency that we had to build in. And insurance obviously is a big cost and ingredient, both from the guest side, right? Like what insurance coverage is and how much is that as a percentage of their overall trip. And then for hosts, they've got to make sure that we've got the right physical and liability coverage for their asset, whether it's a work asset or they consider it their personal baby. So we learned that in the early days. And then we started tackling, okay, how are we going to offer these insurance products? And then that fast became how are we going to become an insurance company?
Yeah, it's a big problem, particularly internationally. I mean, I just crossed West Africa a few months ago, and we could get liability insurance that would work for all of West Africa, but we could not get affordable asset coverage. Years ago, I was able to get some coverage through, it was basically underwritten by Lloyd's, but I just can't find it anymore. It's so difficult when you have a really expensive vehicle. You think of like an EarthRoamer or a really expensive expedition vehicle. Like, how do you insure that when you're trying to cross Mongolia? It's very difficult to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you end up doing that?
There was a company called Thumb Insurance, THUM, and they worked with Lloyd's to underwrite the insurance I had a smaller EarthRoamer, and I was driving it down to Panama, and I was able to get insurance, but they don't offer it for those kind of more austere environments anymore. So it's very difficult to get asset insurance internationally. So it might be an opportunity for you guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Only as a business, have, I think, at least 15% of our professional operators are global, mainly focused around Western Europe. And we are expanding our insurance coverage and offering globally in 2026 to 2027.
Wow. Well, watch
You,
this space then, right?
you
That's
might be
awesome.
insured by us.
Oh,
Although
that's
I will
amazing.
say,
That's amazing.
yeah, going back to the comment about EarthRoamer, that's actually the vehicle on the top of our list. My husband is absolutely obsessed with Overlander vehicles. The large ones in particular.
Sure.
We bought one a couple of years back, but I like things a much more smaller and
Sure.
compact and more
Sure.
simple. And for me, the EarthRoamers are just like they're just like such quality design.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite expensive. I'm not gonna lie. I think they're a little
Yeah.
expensive, but a beautiful product. And I would love to do an Overlander trip and an EarthRoamer.
Yeah, there's so many great ones now, and it's a reflection of the growth of the marketplace. I mean, I was just looking the other day on Expedition Portal, and because we have this huge classified section, we've listed 54,000 vehicles for sale. I mean, it's just, you think about the transaction volume of campers and trailers and vehicles. It was something I never would have expected when we started all this, that the marketplace would be this size, where even companies like Toyota, where their marketing director says we're all in on overlanding. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I don't know if you know, but it's a really large segment. It's one of our fastest growing segments on outdoorsy.com. So it represents over 10% of our listings today. And I think one of the reasons why it's so popular is because, in particular, young people just love that like adventure first way of spending their vacation time. I was surprised actually at how fast that segment is growing within the marketplace.
And what are some of the examples of, like, let's take a typical overland traveler as an example, even someone who lives in Europe, which many people in Europe listen to the podcast, and they want to fly to the US and they want to pick a vehicle up in Denver. What are some of the kinds of overland vehicles you tend to see available on Outdoorsy? How does that process work? What should someone expect if they were to go on to the website?
It's a really simple process. So they go into the website and they can search for the type of vehicle. They can also filter for important like requirements, like can I rent from a superhost, which is what I would recommend if somebody was interested in trying this for the first time, because there's a lot to learn about overlanders and overlanding.
Let's dig into it. I think one of the popular ones is maybe a Jeep Gladiator, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of the easiest for sure to drive. We've got a couple of most rented. The Toyota is, a bit of a gold standard for sure. So starting with that. But yes, the Jeep Gladiator, I personally love because I love those like lightweight little pop-up ones.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we can show some of my favorites here. I'll
Yeah,
share
we
a link
will.
with you. I especially love looking at them when they're in amazing locations like Maui.
Oh,
Right?
geez.
Because like
Can you really rent a Gladiator or a Tacoma in Maui and go
you,
travel?
you really can. And like, I
Wow.
mean, is this not like perfect for those sort of like renters or people that want to like actually get off the beaten path? Because these units are so compact. They're perfect for like staying on beach, like near a beach. They're perfect for
Sure.
getting into those like smaller little areas. So the Jeep Gladiator is a really big, popular one. And um, I love that it still has like a ton of bed storage space on top. I love that you can pack it down super light so you could still use all of that like back area for packing up all of your gear,
Yeah.
bikes, beach gear, etc. But I don't know, I think it's considered the number one rooftop
Okay.
tent. So this is a big standout for us. This gets a lot of clicks, and I think it's pretty affordable. I mean,
Yeah.
you can get them for somewhere between like 180 and 210 a night, 220 a night.
Which is way less than a hotel in Maui.
Way less than a hotel in Maui. And like, who goes to Maui and wants to stay in a hotel?
Yeah.
If you're not figuring out some way to stay on a beach or like a grassy field near a mountaintop or a volcano that's about to erupt, I don't know that you're doing
Are
Hawaii
you really
properly.
doing it right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally.
Um, Definitely the most popular one is the Toyota Tacoma. So that camper truck just seems to be like best known for reliability. And it's definitely one of our most popular mid-size rentals. I think Toyota as a brand name has always been sort of a gold star anyway for like reliability and parts, right? Don't we all know at least 3 or 4 friends that still have a Toyota like
Yeah.
vehicle
Yeah.
that they've never had to go and buy another one because it
Yeah.
still keeps running. And the
Yeah,
same.
Toyota might need to actually recall the vehicle so someone can buy a new car, because it's like you've had your Forerunner for 35 years, you know? Yeah.
Exactly. It's the car that never
Yeah.
gives up. They call the Forerunner the SUV king of
Yeah, totally.
overlanding, I think, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you think about it from a host perspective, you've got a vehicle that's not going to require a lot of upkeep and maintenance and repairs. And then for the person renting the vehicle, they're going like, okay, I'm renting a Toyota. It's probably going to be reliable, even if it's got some higher mileage on it.
Yep, totally agree. And like obviously thinking through breakdowns is really important because if you're going off road and you've got a breakdown and you don't have some way to like either call in to figure out how to troubleshoot it or you're stranded, like that's just like not one of the environmental worries you want to
Yeah,
have.
sure.
So
No, totally.
yep,
That makes a lot of sense.
I
So
would definitely.
lots of Tacomas on there. That makes a lot of sense. And what are those ranging in that same kind of price range, 180 to 250 a night?
Those ones are actually a little less expensive. Yeah. I mean, it depends, of course, a little bit, right, on the market and also what our hosts like provide as add-ons. A lot of the hosts love to fully stock these things so that because like you want to make sure that your weights are correct, right? So a lot of our
Yeah.
hosts want to say, this is the gear, these are the battery packs, like this is what you should pack for food and storage. And if they're putting in a lot of that like extra super host type service, then you're going
Yeah.
to see the price go up. But like I just looked at 3 or 4 while we were going through this, and they're all around $160 a night. Like so affordable. Such a
That
great
is
like,
really affordable.
right?
And like we
Yeah.
talked about, just the idea of being able to try out a vehicle before you spend all of that money on it. Even to be able to
Yeah.
go for a 3-day weekend and say, hey, I want to try out the newest Tacoma.
Yep. I would definitely think this is an important segment for try before you buy.
Yeah.
These units are just so easy. It's hard to tell. Like, do you do a day trip where you're just throwing in the beach towels, the coolers, and some headlamps, and like head out for
Yeah.
a day and one night overstay, or do you pack it up and like do something longer? But these ones are just like grab and go, just really easy,
I was
really easy.
impressed to see that there were actually EarthRoamers to rent on there.
Yeah,
Like one of the examples was a 2022 EarthRoamer for rent.
yeah,
Like,
I know because they're the elite of the elite, right? And they're pretty expensive, and
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I bet you, I mean, if I remember, the price was, you know, comparable to a Four Seasons,
yep.
but you want to talk about Four Seasons?
This is your your Four Seasons outdoors, right? This is
Yeah.
your outdoorsy Four Seasons. They're definitely expensive. Like I mean, they're expensive to buy, they're expensive to rent, but
Sure.
for good reason because they give you that like once in a lifetime opportunity to
Yeah.
well, first of all, to rent something that's expensive. Unless you're like fully into this lifestyle, are you really going to spend that much money like
Hmm.
buying an actual earth roamer that you have to keep and maintain? I don't know. That's quite a serious commitment. So being
Yeah.
able to rent it on outdoorsy.com just gives you that experience. But, it's definitely an $800 a night decision. So,
But
um,
it just really seems fair. I mean, if you wanted to rent one for a week, you're in 6,500, 7,000 bucks,
yep,
and you're
yep,
in a premium overland vehicle with all the water. You get to take a nice hot shower.
yep.
You get a cool truck to drive around on. Your Instagram photos are going to be
Oh,
bomb. So,
amazing. Yeah.
so
So I didn't even
I
think
think it's
about
kind
that.
of a fun. I think it's kind of a fun consideration, especially if you're looking at buying one. Like
Oh, yeah.
what a
Like,
great way to try it out.
can you like for me, what comes to mind for me is if you're like a girlfriend or a fiance that just wants to like blow it out of the water for your like 1 year anniversary or your
Sure.
5 year anniversary, you rent something like that for you and your husband or you and your fiance to go,
Yeah.
and he is just going to be so happy with that as a
Blown
decision.
away. Sure. Yeah.
It's like the ultimate boys' toy. Um,
Yeah.
and as you say, it's a built-in experience, right? I mean, these earth roamers are just so expensive to own, and it's because they come with all of the the gourmet standards, right? Gourmet kitchens, expensive solar panels, like
Yeah.
beautiful
Coffee
finished.
makers.
Yeah,
That's I really like what you just brought up. I've always been a fan of, if you're going to give a gift, give a gift of experience. Like, what a neat idea when someone's thinking like how can what can I buy for my partner when they've got everything? And you get to go on to this site and find the kind of truck that they would love to drive, or that maybe is their dream vehicle,
Yeah.
and you make that the gift. And you're $400 or $500 into a weekend, which is what people normally spend on holiday gifts. And
Yep.
next thing you know, you've given someone memories that'll last for the rest of their life.
Yeah. Yeah. I always talk about that because outdoorsy experiences are experiences that shape who you are,
Hmm.
right? Those experiences live within your soul. And if you're out there with like a partner or kids or a bigger family, like you have them at your disposal for
Yeah.
all the years to come. And you can't say that about any t-shirt or any pair of jeans or any leather handbag, maybe a couple leather handbags, but not really, right?
No, that's true. There's not very many leather handbags I still use. Maybe that saddleback one I got made in Mexico
That's
15 years ago. I still have that one, but you're right. All that stuff ends up in a landfill. So these are memories that last for a lifetime. Maybe let's take another couple more minutes and let's talk about the full spectrum of what's available to be rented. So, for example, you guys also rent trailers. And I know that if someone's got a nice half-ton pickup truck, they can rent a trailer. Um, let's make sure we've covered the whole spectrum. So you've got everything from campers and earth-roamers to Tacomas and Gladiators and Jeeps. And then you've also got trailers. Have we covered kind of all of the different types of vehicles that you tend to find people renting? How about
I think,
motorcycles?
well, you know what? We actually do have a couple motorcycles
There you go.
on the marketplace, which is cool. And I'm not sure if we talked about this a lot, Scott, but like one of the things that makes Outdoorsy as a marketplace like the best is we build our own insurance products and
Hmm.
coverages. And
Yeah.
so Roamly is the name brand, insurance that moves. And we've got a lot of great insurance products for people that own motorcycles or rent motorcycles,
Yeah.
people that own or rent ATVs, trailers, RVs, of course, and boats. So you'll find a lot of that inventory on the site, even though it doesn't dominate it. So sometimes you'll find motorcycles included as an add-on, right? If somebody is a
Sure.
massive adventure host, you'll find them renting out an RV and a motorcycle, or their pickup truck, a trailer, and a motorcycle. Just not the same volume of units that we have, like within the broader RV category.
When I looked through the trailers, I really liked the fact that you could find everything from a vintage looking teardrop, all the way up to like a Boreas trailer. There's some really high end units. And then there's also ones that are quite affordable or even have roof tents on them. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really interesting, the opportunity to rent a trailer, which drops the per day cost quite a bit.
Yeah, it really does. And it gives you more flexibility because if you have a trailer, you can unhook the trailer
Yeah.
and then you can like cruise around in an adventure type vehicle, right? If it's just a Jeep, for example,
Yep.
versus a truck camper, you've got two in one. And yeah, I mean, I love the compact size of those teardrop trailers.
Yeah. Yeah. They're
Um,
super cool.
they're real and they look beautiful, right? Like
Yeah.
that's probably, I don't know if you know about the brand Taxa, but I met the founder a while back and we stay friends. And I really admired his whole story about and mission to build like the most compact but beautiful and aesthetically pleasing
Yeah.
trailer based on his experience, I think, of building some like units for space travel, I think was his background.
I
And
remember
then,
that. I think I
remember
met
that?
him at an outdoor retailer like 20 years ago when he
Yeah.
first started. That's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really like that. I love the fact that when you peruse the site, because, I do spend an inordinate amount of time on Bring a Trailer looking for vehicles that I shouldn't buy. So
Yeah.
it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to go on to Outdoorsy and just kind of dream a little bit of like, oh, I'd like to try this out, or check that particular unit out and see how it works in the field, and then plan a little vacation that's not typical.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm glad you brought up the point about a choice because there's such a big difference, right? These trailers, and teardrops even smaller, are extremely lightweight and super
Mm,
easy to maneuver around. But
yeah.
you don't know if you prefer that, versus an all-in-one and the benefit and convenience of not having to like hook up and unhook your trailer until you
Totally.
actually try those two things. And I remember when we first started Outdoorsy, I thought for sure that I was like, I wanted to be all in the Airstream, like a 30-foot minimum Airstream, because I loved the beauty and the
They
story.
are
And then
beautiful. Yeah.
they're gorgeous and I love the interior. But, after using it, like by the 10th or 12th trip, I'm like, wait a minute, this is so heavy to tow.
True.
So then I started thinking, wait a minute, what matters more to me? And as it turns out, I over the years eventually went from loving like a truck and a trailer to actually just like a super compact camper van. So I really, really got into like Class Bs. And then now as we think about, renting in the future, retiring, those kinds of things, I think a truck camper is where it's at. Like I love the simplicity and that forcing function. Do not
Yeah.
overpack, do not weigh it down. And honestly, you'll be happier when you're on the road and you're out there for the weekend because you don't need any of this stuff. You
So
really don't.
true. And then you drop the truck camper during the week and you can go to Home Depot, use it as a pickup. Yeah, that's what I use. I use a truck camper on my pickup. So, well, those are some really great examples, Jen. For those that are watching YouTube, you'll be able to see all the screenshots and everything like that of the different vehicles that we talked about and some of the other ones that I've dug up in my own research. Okay. And then what does the person need to be a certain age in order to rent, or does that depend on the host or the insurance? How does that work? When someone wants to go and do that for a week, what are they kind of looking for on like an average price to rent something like a Tacoma or a Gladiator with insurance and everything?
Good question on the pricing. Research in Denver, but $160 a night.
Well, that's cheap. It's
Yeah.
way less than I was expecting.
Yeah, it's not an expensive per night. And then when you start factoring in that you will probably like bring all of your own food and this thing comes with like solar and energy saving benefits,
Does it have like a little camper on it, or
it does. It has a super little, little rooftop camper.
Perfect.
So like I'm just reading this particular listing, and a lot of these ones come fully stocked. And this is where it gets really cool, right? Like the Overlander crew is so into like how you actually enjoy the experience that this particular host is bundling his headlamps, the tents, sleeping bags, sheets, all the camping gear you need, butane stoves, your tanks, the pots, pans, and dishes, which by the way is one of the most important things to consider actually when you're renting from Outdoorsy. Like based on all of the data that we've learned renting, it's really important that you don't overpack these things. There's a lot of mechanical failures and issues that come about if the truck is like too heavy. Yeah. So I love it when you've got the hosts that are actually including everything that you need, right? They're prioritizing the essentials. They're making sure that you've got all of the durable gear and you've got everything that they think you need for a really good light load, but like you still have the flexibility for everything that you need. I would always lean to the experts, and this is definitely one of those categories, like versus the more standard ones like a camper van or, a motorhome.
Not a week goes by that someone doesn't reach out to ask how they can help support the podcast. We are supported entirely by Overland Journal, the magazine. So when you become a subscriber to the Overland Journal print magazine, you get this beautiful book that comes in 5 times a year. It also gives you access to our digital archive, and it's well over 100 pages of gorgeous images and detailed testing and adventures from around the globe. So if you go to overlandjournal.com and you subscribe to the magazine, use the code Overland Podcast, and that'll get you 20% off. It's only available to our podcast listeners. We don't advertise it anywhere else. And then you help us to maintain that independent, employee-owned journalism that we have been famous for. So it allows us to conduct those tests without any advertorial. Another way you can help out too, I produced a book last year with Simon & Schuster called Overlanding 101. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or even your local bookstore. And that encompasses my decades of travel around the world, all of my mistakes and failures and the lessons that I've learned in traveling around the globe. Many of those that you hear on the podcast have been distilled down into print form with great lists and beautiful imagery. So you can find that at your local bookstore, Overlanding 101. And thank you all for listening and for supporting us so much throughout these years.
That makes a lot of sense. What a neat opportunity. You think about someone that lives in Germany or they live in the UK and they would love to come and see Southern Utah. They fly into Salt Lake City, they rent a Tacoma with a camper on it, and off they go. And for that kind of money per day, it's less than a hotel. And you've got the car.
You've got the car.
Yeah,
That's actually, oh,
exactly.
that is one of my favorite things actually about truck campers is, yeah, it's easy to move around once you hit your destination. And yeah, as I said, like a lot of the hosts in this segment, it's not just even a convenience thing. They feel proud to be able to like equip the unit with
Sure.
everything that you need because it's a way that they can show you like how they've experienced
Yeah.
off-roading
Yeah,
and how
sure.
they've like dialed in exactly what you need for the
And from the hosting side, do you find that a lot of these folks, it's a way for them to be able to maybe afford a vehicle that they couldn't normally afford, or a way to kind of underwrite some of the expenses of having such an expensive vehicle? What are you finding that, like, what some of the motivations? Obviously, there's going to be people who maybe own 5 or 6 units and they're making it a tiny business, but how about for the individual? What are you finding people's motivations are to renting out their car like that?
Yeah, I think the biggest motivation is definitely financial. They want to like fuel their own new global expeditions. Like
Mm,
that's what most people talk to us about is you can make $30,000 to $45,000 in 1 year just renting it out, and that's
yeah.
like enough to fund new trips,
Yep.
especially because like these guys and women that are overlanding are pretty clever on like how to save money, how to stay out on the road, or how to stay on trips for as long as possible without overspending, right? Like the whole point of overlanding and longer expeditions is to see and experience life, not to spend money doing life.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest, most consistent motivation is like how do we make more money so that we can like fuel exploring more. As AI starts to come in and, as they're saying, right, take more jobs and people start losing their corporate way of working, I think you're going to start seeing more people think about, okay, what's my side hustle or how do I work? And you will find even like 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds start to think more creatively about how they live and work. And that's going to open up people's minds for thinking about working on the road or
Mhm.
working for, say, 6 months and then doing like a longer trip for the next 6 months or 3 months or whatever the increments are, which is really different from how certainly I grew up and my parents, right? Where you would go to college and school for years, you'd have your big career for 20 years, and then you would retire. That's going to change at much more frequent.
I agree. And AI is here and it's not going to slow down. So it absolutely makes sense that people feel uncomfortable with it because it is something totally emerging and disruptive. But I think if people look at it as another form of leverage. So a company like Outdoorsy requires leverage to grow. It requires capital and it requires human activity and effort in order to grow. But this is a way for people that are even new to entrepreneurship or new to travel or new to renting their vehicle, use AI as a way to add leverage to your own activity. Smart people are still necessary in the world. Creative people are still necessary in the world. But what AI allows us to do is amplify the amount of output that a smart or creative or entrepreneurial person can produce. I mean, you and I, as business owners, we have to have leverage or we don't grow. And now we have a whole new form of leverage that we can use to grow our business.
Yeah, totally. And what's beautiful about adventure travel is usually people that are interested in adventure travel and most people that rent any kind of a truck camper or overlander type vehicle is an adventurer.
Yeah.
You've already built in like easy wins for capturing content or storytelling
Hmm.
or building out itineraries. And there's just so much change in how we're consuming content. I would imagine that's going to open up like a new realm of content creators. And I think this is the segment of overland curious people that will do will do the best in it.
And I think it's so cool to see how the marketplace has grown because I had really good friends here in Prescott. They owned a couple like laundromats and they started Harvest Host.
You know
Like
the
they're
business
just
of
like
my harvest
they're
house.
just, yeah, the greens,
Yeah,
right? So they're just like the
yeah.
coolest people. And they were really smart. They figured like, hey, we want to travel around the world, so let's have some laundromats. And they got back and they're like, now what do we do? And and the next thing you know, they're like off to the races. Your story is the same. And it leads me to a question, Jen. What, like, this is a huge experience for you personally to grow a business, to be at 200 employees, which means that you're quite on the track towards something very significant. How has that changed you as a person? Like, how is Jen different today than you were in 2014 or 2012 when you started all this?
Well, I am I'm a lot happier. So that's one
That's
thing.
amazing.
That is, yeah, that's a nice bonus. I'm really proud of the company that we have built. We've built it with like these, 200 plus people. So many people that work at Outdoorsy have worked for the company for like over 5 or 6 years,
Mhm.
which I love. We've developed a really good community of on our host side in particular. We know these people; they've become friends. I don't know if you've heard or anybody had mentioned it to you, but we run an annual event. It's called the Outdoorsy Group Summit. This year it's happening in Austin on April 7th. And we're going to bring together hundreds of professional operators and content creators,
Wow.
and all of our service providers that make like running a marketplace work. And those moments give me probably the greatest amount of like reminders that what we're doing really matters in the
Mm.
world, which is what we had set out to build as a company. We wanted to build a company where we weren't selling a lot of extra like frivolous retail
Mm.
products to people that we don't think that they need, and
Yeah.
instead like creating environments where they can spend more time with themselves, with their partners, with their families, with friends, doing the activities, and then exploring like the passions that make them the most happy and fulfilled in life. And so that's changed me quite a bit as a person, because as an entrepreneur, you don't often like stop, or at least me as an entrepreneur, I don't often stop and like look back at everything that we've achieved and what we built, because I'm so focused on like looking at the future. And right now we're tackling okay, what does a successful marketplace look like in the age of agentic systems and AI infrastructure? But if you're asking me what's changed about me and how do I feel, like I feel really proud to have built a great company with great people around me
Yeah.
in leadership that does the right thing, that puts our customers first, and has created products and services that I think fuel the world in a better way. Than I'm a much
That's
more
incredible.
mature person.
That's incredible because the only way you get to this level of success is to give so much of yourself to get here. And the fact that you are experiencing joy in this moment, that is extremely rare. That is extremely rare.
Yeah, it's that constant balance, right? In the entrepreneur psyche. It's joy, and then it's, I don't want to say fear, although I've come to develop a really good relationship with fear. I now use fear as fuel, and so I don't use it. I recognize it and I'm like, thanks for helping me point the right direction and give me some of that natural energy, but I no longer consider it as something that will become debilitating. And so it's that push and pull of joy and fear. But yeah, it feels good to work with a group of leaders and people that over the years we've been able to tweak and promote. And we've got some really solid talent of individuals that lead our product and lead our marketplace health and our marketing teams and our customer service teams. And then on the insurance side, we have a full actuarial department and product
Amazing.
department. We have claims and customer service and support. Also, very integral departments for people that are adventure curious or overlanders, because you do not want to catch yourself with no cell service and like no way to like hit emergency services, or not have the insurance that you need to cover an adventurous trip, because those things are par for the course for anybody that's renting vehicles to go overlanding.
Well, that's such a neat offering. And, to hear you speak about fear, the only fear is natural. It's what we're feeling. So feelings are totally natural. It's when, I think when people don't take action about what they're feeling fearful of is when anxiety begins to creep in. And I've found that really the only antidote to any form of anxiety is action. So the fact that you have taken such action in your life to grow a business and build a great team of people, and now this many years later and this big of a company, to find that you're feeling really happy, that's a rare outcome for an entrepreneur. So that's something you should be really proud of.
Yeah, well, I've learned a lot from other entrepreneurs. I overdose on a lot of entrepreneurial content every day, and that's what's helped teach me these things that I've learned over the years. But I love your point that you just made, and it reminds me, like, I have a lot of these little entrepreneurial reminders or phrases that I drop as like calendar or meetings in each of my calendar time slots, like morning, afternoon, midday. I color code them, and
Nice.
they are the phrases that like remind me on what I need to focus on. And the one I'm loving right now is start before you're ready. Now that might not seem like a big thing, right? It might just be, just like a nice little helpful cliche, but if you focus on the most important word, and that is before, it helps like draw out like what's important about that particular reminder. It's not just start, but it's start before you're ready, because like that's usually what gets in the way, right? People want to put in a year of planning, 3 months of planning, even within my own company. There's great departments, and there is a lot I could learn before I really know a situation too deeply, and I might want to spend a whole week just like learning, investigating, summarizing, documenting, reviewing. And I have to constantly remind myself, nope, start before I'm ready. Like taking action is more important than a lot of planning. I'm not saying planning is important,
Yeah.
because planning is also important. Plans are important, or planning is more important than plans. Starting.
And also plans change so quickly. So you've got to start, and especially at the rate at which things change today, if you wait even 6 months, it's oftentimes too late. The pace of change is so quick that you really, if you've got a good idea and you believe in it, take the leap.
Yeah, you've got to get something like live and in front of customers to see them react to it way more than the importance of like absolutely perfecting something. Because if you're making something that no one wants to buy, then or a new feature or a new price point or a new tool, then you've spent time on the wrong thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's such good advice. And I'm sure people that are listening appreciate those insights, and because it applies also to travel. We're never going to be younger or healthier, maybe a little healthier, but we're never going to be younger than we are today. So saying, oh, I'm going to go and do this big trip in 10 years, that opportunity might not even exist then. So if something's really important to us, make it a goal. Get off of the doom scrolling and put some energy behind what does it take to actually go and see that part of the world, or to start your own business, or to improve your life in some way.
I hear that all the time. It's the biggest blocker that we have for families or people that have never been in an RV or done any kind of RV camping or camping at all. The biggest objection that I hear all the time is, I have to plan it. I have to know where I'm going. I have to figure out my route. I have to figure out the campgrounds. I have to figure out the activities to do. Also, I have to think about how I'm going to pack the RV or the camper van. And I also used to think that too, until I did enough of the trips. And then I realized, no, actually, all you have to do is just get in and turn the key, because there's so many like apps and tools. You can't even get away from like your browser or your internet connection or recommendations popping up at you. The only thing you really need to plan for is, can I take the time off? And you don't even have to get that right perfectly. Just start with, okay, I'm going to leave work early this one time. I'm going to leave on Thursday night, and then I've got the weekend. Start with that. And you'll find like, and maybe with the first night, like where are you going to stay the first night? Get in the road, get in the RV and like hit the road, and everything else becomes easy. You've got plenty of places you can stop for food, at restaurants. You start talking to one person and they're going to give you 5 recommendations that are better than, many you've heard before. You can pick up groceries along the way. It's one of the best things about all these units is full-size refrigerators. Like, you just don't have to do that much planning. In fact, what you have to do is tell yourself not to do the planning and just get started. Just get in the vehicle and go.
Yeah. In fact, if I was thinking about like my trip down West Africa, if I tried to plan all of it, it would have been impossible. You just have to start in Morocco and figure it out as you head south. Otherwise, you're never going to go. It's just, and it's the same thing with the idea of like, how do I rent my vehicle, or how do I rent my home, or how do I find another source of income that helps to support my travels? hop on to Outdoorsy and take a look. I'm sure you guys have some great resources. The site's really fun to cruise around on. It's been a while since I've been on there. And I was shocked with the number of campers and trailers and vehicles that are available to rent on there.
Yeah, I mean, what makes Outdoorsy like the best rental place is the quality of our vehicles and the quality of our hosts, bar none. Like we have that matters. You don't want to like sign up for a week vacation and then find yourself in like, a 9-year-old unit that hasn't been maintained, doesn't have like the right electrical or entertainment system or tires. And all of the hosts on our platform, we've got really strict guidelines, and we prune our inventory a lot. We have a whole marketplace quality team that looks at listings, looks at host responsiveness. They make sure, particularly for the hosts that get like number 1, number 2, or first page spots on the marketplace, that these are like the best experiences at the vehicle level and also at the host level. And that matters a lot, particularly for people that are looking to just even, use their like 2 or 3 weeks holiday they get from their job. That it matters more to get your vacation time right. But the site is so easy to navigate. And we have interspersed a lot of really good like itinerary content. Our Instagram, I think, is like an awesome place to find and follow. We love to like showcase. We'd love to have you on our Instagram, and or maybe like celebrity content coming the other way, where we showcase like people that go really deep on certain types of vehicles or certain types of trips. So you can like hit up all the highlight reels and get good suggestions for like epic road trips or just like easy, quick weekends by state. It's a really good community, as I say. It's not just a listing site where you're just like perusing for like vehicles to rent at good price points. It's a marketplace of people that work together to like learn what's best and have that come through in the listing and the content that they provide. And then also like how they manage working with you to describe like, okay, what's a check-in and check-out? How do you learn about the vehicle? How do we share with you some of our best practices on like things to include as part of the trip or not? And then all of our hosts are available 24/7, like the entire trip through the app, which is great. And we're looking at incorporating some new like mobile tech services. So if something goes wrong when you're on the road, an immediate click to call, aside from providing roadside services, like actually having mobile techs a phone call away. So we're layering in other ways to feel like safe and like easily connected to people that have your back while you're on the road.
Because so many of those systems are the same from an RV to an overland vehicle. Did you check the fuse? Are your solar panels covered? Is it stormy out and there's a bunch of cloud cover? That's probably why your solar isn't charging the battery. You could definitely have a hotline that would answer a lot of those questions pretty quickly.
Yep, absolutely. It's amazing how it's usually, like they always say, right, on all technical support lines, it's usually one of 3 questions.
Yeah, that's true. Control, Alt, Delete.
Exactly.
I was funny. I went on your website the other day and I was looking around and seeing the vehicles that are available. And it was very low friction process. It was really easy to get to the point of like essentially securing a vehicle. And then this morning I had to go on to U-Haul to rent a one-way trailer. And that it took me 7 times longer than finding a Tacoma in Colorado to rent, because there was all of these pages where it was saying, hey, do you want some tape? Do you want some, Fernie pads? Do you want this insurance? Do you want that insurance? Do you want this person to unload it? Do you want to store your gear here? It was unbelievable to rent like a small enclosed trailer was such high friction and so frustrating. I'm like, I should have just bought a trailer. I would have felt better at the end of the process. So you guys are doing a great job keeping it. And the photos are great. The site is really inspiring to navigate. Some of the pictures that the hosts put of the vehicles in different places are really beautiful. So you can kind of see yourself in that place.
Yeah. And that's part of like how we educate our hosts and how we make the marketplace work for the host and the guests. So we're coaching them on like what needs to be in the carousel. One of the things that we just added recently is a quick summary section on all of our listing pages. So that summary talks about like what are the features in the vehicle, and then what are some of the tips or like how to think about like what the experience would be like. So when you're reading through this listing page, obviously we've got to talk to you about like the length and the weight and like hookup connections and like the the particulars at the vehicle level, but what I prefer more is what's a quick summary on how I understand more about what the experience is going to be like. So we've got a Boras XT, and like this guy's quick summary is kind of cool. He's like, conquer any terrain. This expedition RV is built for rugged off-grid adventures. And then he's talking more about like the clearance, the suspension system, like what it's good for what kind of like off-trail rugged paths and not. And then also there's a couple of summary points around like how to stay convertible, like what are the requirements that he provides for like the gallons of water, in this case 30 gallons, solar panel, hot showers. He's also talking about the bed linens and the duvet, which personally I love because my husband, massive fan of extreme sized vehicles and roading adventure.
Yeah, that's such a great way for people to really parse out what they're looking for. And when I was thinking about our conversation today, there was a couple use cases that I think the listeners need to be aware of. So let's say that you would really like to buy a certain kind of camper or a certain type of vehicle. What a great opportunity to rent one for 3 or 4 days, maybe for a week, and really see if that size of vehicle or if that vehicle is right for you. Maybe you would really love to have a storyteller van. Like, what a great way to spend like maybe $2,000 to decide if you want to spend $200,000 or not. That was one of the things I thought would be really helpful, would be for people to actually get to use something that's very expensive that they're about ready to make a huge purchase decision around, may it out in the field. The other use case I thought of was so many of these vehicles are hardly used. So they may buy an EarthRoamer, or they may buy a van, a 4-wheel drive van, and they only use it 3 or 4 weekends out of the year. Like, the finances don't justify it. So either rent the thing when you're not using it, or rent 3 or 4 times a year, and you're going to be at a fraction of the cost of what would be otherwise a depreciating asset. So, and the reason why I really felt like this was a great conversation today, we don't normally do these kinds of features, but there's no one else like you on the market. You're not paying to be on the podcast. This is not advertorial. We just are grateful for the opportunity to talk to you, but no one else is doing this. So I don't know that people really are aware that this is available in North America and other parts of the world.
I'm so glad that you said it that way, because I was just so excited to talk to you and also want to spend a little bit more time talking about overlanding trips, because I want to learn and do more of them myself. I would love to like double click on those points, because that's exactly right. I mean, these are expensive vehicles. I know that because my husband and I have looked into buying a couple ourselves, and every time I'm like, gulp at the price tag for them. And they're a different kind of a vehicle, right? These things are outfitted to be able to like live backcountry for a few days. You're going to be geeking out on batteries, systems, weight, tires, solar panels, and you got to know how to use this equipment and the electrical systems and build them. This is not for the amateur or the first time person. So I couldn't imagine why you wouldn't want to rent one or two, just even try 2 different types, 2 sizes, like go for a lighter weight, like pop-up camper truck camp, and then maybe go for something like a little bit more significant and get a feeling for what the decision matrix would be like. Try that and then see if you actually prefer that kind of like time outdoors versus just something that's a little bit more stock standard, like a Class B camper van. You find out you actually want to stay more in like the urban city centers and not do as much of the boondocking. Because I don't think you know that until you try it. Outdoorsy is perfect. We've got so much range of product. And we're in 4,800 cities across North America. There's a really good chance that you're going to find exactly the type of vehicle that you want close to you. You can rent it for a weekend. Use that to like help guide a actual purchase decision. And then to your point around, okay, great. So now let's just say you've bought one of these things and you're, $100,000 in or $75,000 into it. It should feel a lot better knowing that you can make 30 grand back 1 year renting it when you're not using it. And in a couple of years, you've now paid off that total unit. What's, the sweet spot is you also still own the unit, so you could resell it. So opportunity to recover all of your costs are there, I think, in like probably a couple year payback cycle.
Yeah, what a cool concept. As we kind of wrap up the interview, there was a few things. It seems like that you're a real student of business and entrepreneurship. When it comes to travel or business, what are some of your favorite books? What are some of the ones that you go back to or you have on your playlist for an audiobook? What are some of your favorite titles? I'm a real book nerd, so I always love to hear what people love.
Well, I can tell you, so because of AI coming down on us at warp speed, I have been spending a lot more time listening to podcasts than reading books. Although I will shout out from an entrepreneur perspective, like the book The Hard Thing About Hard Things, that is like, it's a classic
That's
by
a great
Ben
one.
Horowitz. Yeah. And it really is, I think, the most important book that I've read, not just because it's the reality of like how you manage like leadership through the war of building a startup to a self-sustaining scaling business when there are no easy answers. But I loved the core insight in that book, which is important for all entrepreneurs to know before they decide that they really want to get in particular if they're going to like leave their jobs to make this decision. And that is, you have to find peace in the struggle of entrepreneurship, because even if you've hit like a nice smooth path, there'll be another rough one soon. You've got to like know how to find peace through the struggles. That's one of my all-time favorite books. But I would say I'm more into podcasts right now and listening to them. I've been following Ray Dalio. I'm not sure if you
Yeah,
know
he's
that
great.
guy.
His
Yeah,
Principles book is great.
yeah, like I right now, like I think for me, I listen a lot more in understanding how he's reporting the macro events that are changing right in the economy and in like the overall world order. That matters. And then his series Principles of the Day.
Yeah.
I follow them all the time, and I try and cherry pick a couple that I think are really important for our teams and share them. So that's one great podcast. I also love Stephen Bartlett. I don't know if you follow him.
I think so. Yeah.
He's great because I think he's
What's
got
the
a
name of his
great,
podcast?
it's called The Diary of the
Yeah,
CEO,
yeah. No, he's great. Yeah, I've listened to a bunch of those. Yeah,
right?
he's
Yeah.
awesome.
Because he like what he does well is, I think he's got a good blend of all the modern day business leaders, and it's a combination of sharing their stories and experiences as well as just like hitting some of the like the facts of their businesses. So I bookmark a lot of his podcasts, and then I go back and I can listen to like one or two of those like business leader segments 3 or 4 times, and I can always go back and pick out different nuggets. So I've been using podcasts actually as a way to save them and bookmark them and then go back and reference them. I could go on.
No, I appreciate it. No, those are great. And
I could
I also
give
like that he's really low ego. He's really thoughtful
solo
as an
ego.
interviewer. That can be a little grating at times with some of the hosts. I just listened to a great podcast on AI by a guy by the name of Naval Ravikant, and it just dropped a few days ago. So he had like an hour long just kind of riff session on the current state of AI that was very insightful. So I'll send you that after
Yeah, thank you for
meeting.
that. Yeah, I try not to watch too many of the doomsday, like ex Google CTO
Yeah.
and or like the TED Talks that are
Yeah.
out there. They can be a little bit scary, but there's so much content around AI, and that's actually the area that I'm spending the most amount of my time. I'm doing an AI product leadership course now, and I had just finished a Stanford course to learn how to ready an organization for moving into a world where you'll have human agents and AI agents and building like new products and services. Most people, especially when it comes to travel, they're going to probably make a lot of their like searching, finding, deciding decisions through LLMs now. And how do we build product in a marketplace that hits the right balance?
Yeah, it's an interesting time, a whole new adventure for sure. Last question. If you were to give some advice to your, call it 25-year-old self, if you were everything that you've learned in life about travel and business, what would you tell yourself? How would you give that pep talk to you if you were about ready to, or pick some other, 25-year-old person that's getting ready to start a life of adventure and business? What kind of advice would you give?
I think the best advice is just don't quit. Resourcefulness is the master skill in life, because there were so many times, whether I was 25 and I had marketing manager jobs in different companies, or where I am today. The number of times that you want to stop and quit because you think you're not doing something good enough, or you're not smart enough, or you'll never be able to figure things out. You will if you just keep going. You have to be resourceful though. So reach out to anybody, like reach out to yourself, right? Podcasters, business leaders, competitors, like everybody will probably answer your phone call. And if you can surround yourself by really positive individuals that are also out there wanting to like maximize their life and their learnings, then that gives you the energy to like build the pieces together and, you know, make it another day, because you can start and stop your day. Don't ever quit at the end of a day. Just wake up the next morning and you've got a new slate, and keep it going.
That's great advice. That's great advice. And it also applies to travel. If you're having a really hard day of travel, don't quit the trip
Don't
at the
quit.
end of the day. Start up the next day after you got some sleep and a cup of coffee, and you might be able to dig deep. I remember hearing not long ago, and that the number one reason why most organizations fail is not money. It's not something regulatory. It's not competition. The founder runs out of energy.
Out of gas.
They give up. They run out of gas. So you're so right. Don't lift. Keep.
Yeah. If you must, take a longer vacation or a sabbatical, but never quit.
Yeah.
And also that point, Scott, around sleep is like a really big one. And also one of my power moves these days, like I'm probably in bed like way earlier. Well, I am in bed way earlier than I was when I was 25, but it might be embarrassing for me to even tell you what time I go to sleep at.
It's working for you.
I try to go to sleep really early in the evening, and I maximize the mornings, because I also try and spend weekends in silence. I know that sounds a little like strange, but I try to use the mornings and use the weekends to let my brain sort of like data dump everything that I've learned. And then I trust my intuition to like pop up and focus on what are the company's biggest problems. What is a framework of what do I do? What do I drop? What do I delay? And that allows me to think through the work on the table and only spend my time on the most important problems, which is a skill in itself, because entrepreneurs can get very caught up in doing a lot of things. But if you're not focusing on the most important problems that the company has, then you're just, it's a slow demise, but it's a demise, right? You don't want to shy away from like the biggest problems the company has to solve. You have to have the energy to solve it. And so going to sleep early and using those like early mornings or those weekends to allow your intuition to rise to the surface and focus on them those are entrepreneur power moves. I know they sound simple, but like after 20 plus years, like that's the secrets, some of the secrets to success.
That's great advice, Jen. You are such an inspiration. You're in a position of importance within our industry. We're grateful that Outdoorsy exists and that you and your team are empowering people to get out and explore, which is what we believe is so important. We believe that travel changes people in a positive way, and we want people to have those experiences, to get off their phone and actually go see that place for themselves. And what you and your team are doing is empowering people to do that. So thank you for your time today, and thank you so much for what you're doing for this industry.
I really appreciate it. I'm so pleased to meet you. I look forward to meeting you in person. I do hope you come to the Outdoorsy Group Summit this year.
Oh, that sounds fun.
You're absolutely right when you make those comments, Scott, that like sharing experiences with other people has a much stronger psychological link to long-term happiness and intrinsic happiness within yourself. And one of the best ways to do that is outdoors with no distractions. And I really enjoy having the conversation with you, and I look forward to like learning more about the community that follows you, and would love to think about how we could provide a bit more value for them.
You absolutely are, and we thank you so much for being on the podcast, and we thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.